What is a frontier? Well, Merriam-Webster describes a frontier as a line of division between different or opposed things. This is how Madam C.J. Walker crossed and broke the economical and racial frontiers of the late 19th and early 20th century, leading to a shift in the African American workforce in the U.S. through her work in philanthropy, entrepreneurship, and activism.
Madam C.J. Walker, Sarah Breedlove, was born on December 23, 1867, in Delta, Louisiana. Her parents were Owen and Minerva. They were Louisiana sharecroppers who had been born into slavery. They have had 4 kids, and Sarah was their 5th child. Sarah Breedlove was the only child out of Owen and Minerva's kids to be born out of slavery because of the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation was declared on September 22, 1862. President Lincoln issued his preliminary proclamation. It stated that states in those states, or parts of those states, still in rebellion as of January 1st, had been declared free. She later became an orphan at the age of 7 and went to live with her older sister, Lavinia Breedlove. Sarah and her sister would work in cotton fields to escape her abusive brother-in-law. She later got married at the age of 14 to Moses McWilliams to escape her abusive brother-in-law. At the age of 17, she gave birth to her daughter, Lelia, later known as A'Lelia. Madam C.J. Walker's husband died in 1887, and she became a widow at the age of 20, raising her 2-year-old daughter alone. Sarah Breedlove and her 2-year-old daughter later moved to St. Louis in 1888.
In St. Louis, Walker was living off of $1.50 a day, working as a cook and as a laundress to support her and her daughter. During this time, she was struggling to pay her bills and send her daughter to school to get a formal education. At the age of 35, Walker wasn't sure what was ahead. One day, while she was at her washing tubs, she said to herself, "What are you going to do when you grow old and your back gets stiff? Who's going to take care of your little girl?" Her fears didn't stop. She soon realized that her hair was falling out. This was due to the fact that in the late 1800s and early 1900s, indoor plumbing was a luxury. Due to this, washing hair was not a regular task, which left it vulnerable to chemicals, bacteria, and lice. Her life was finally starting to turn around when she met Annie Malone and her, the great and wonderful hair grower, at the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1904. She began working for Malone as a sales associate. At the time, most African Americans were trapped as sharecroppers, meaning the majority of businesses were white-owned and slow to respond to the needs of African Americans. This was different to Annie Malone, whose beauty products were more catered towards Black women. With Malone, Breedlove had the opportunity to learn more about how to care for the hair type of Black Americans, as well as learning marketing tactics. In 1906, Sarah married Charles Joseph Walker and began going by Madam C.J. Walker. The same year, she awoke from a dream where she claimed, "A big black man appeared to me and told me what to mix up for my hair. Some of the remedy was grown in Africa, but I sent for it, put it on my scalp, and in a few weeks, my hair was coming in faster than it had ever fallen out." The product she later named Madam C.J. Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower. It was her initial investment, and she had put $1.25 into. Walker now had the advantage over Annie Turnbow because she had added Madam in front of her name, which appealed to French clientele, as well as sounding more high-end and boutique-ish. Her aggressive door-to-door sales strategies, as well as appearing at any events promoting her products and using Black newspapers, paid off. So, by 1910, she invested $10,000 of her own money and built the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company headquarters in Indianapolis, Indiana. This started her career as an entrepreneur and philanthropist, a journey to cross a major economical frontier.
Walker's business started out with her homemade remedies that had been created to help her scalp disorder. Like Madam C.J. Walker, Annie Malone had also created Black beauty products. From an early age, she understood that it was important to maintain healthy hair because it could help determine someone's social status. Madam C.J. Walker started working for Annie Malone in 1903 as a sales agent. After Madam C.J. Walker married Charles, she and Annie Malone started to compete as their businesses grew. Although Madam C.J. Walker was very successful and her marketing was clever, some of her products were not just for women, but men as well. She thought that African American men would also have problems with their hair like her own. She would always advertise her product during any form of events that had potential customers. At first, Madam C.J. Walker would go from house to house selling her products that were used in a way called the Walker method. The Walker method is Madam C.J. Walker's process to prepare the hair for the wonderful hair growers such as lotions, shampoo, etc. It consists of shampoo, pomade, strenuous brushing, and finally, the iron comb. Sometimes, Madam C.J. Walker would go traveling around the whole country presenting and teaching about her product and why it was made. In 1908, she established her first factory along with a beauty school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Then, in 1910, she moved to her main factory in Indianapolis. She moved there because the population of African American people was greater than in Pittsburgh. But because she needed someone to take care of the first factory in Pittsburgh, she left the management to Aurelia. She hired around 3,000 people, the majority of them being African American women that went door to door advertising and selling the beauty products. She would also ask her employees to give back to the community and give them a bonus as a reward. Madam C.J. Walker was also very generous with her money. She would donate large amounts of money to education purposes, African American charities, and orphanages. Madam C.J. Walker donated a huge amount of money in 1919 to the colored YMCA of Indianapolis before her death. She donated $100,000 in total. Nowadays, the money she donated is equivalent to more than $3 million. Madam C.J. Walker died on May 25, 1919, at the age of 51 because of high blood pressure or hypertension. Her funeral was on May 30th, 5 days after her death.
By the time of Madam C.J. Walker's death, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company had claimed to train 40,000 employees as sales associates. After Walker's death, Aurelia took over the company as president, but was known more for her parties and philanthropy work than her business management. After her death in 1931, the company carried on until 1981. Even though the company is no longer manufacturing products, there is a line of hair care products all under $10 USD, bearing the name of Madam C.J. Walker for sale at Sephora. Madam C.J. Walker is often recognized as the first self-made female millionaire, and also holds this title in the Guinness World Record. Although some people argue that Annie Malone was first to be millionaire, it's hard to prove who was first, due to multiple accounts of an actual story. Walker and Malone are considered as founders of the African American beauty products. Because of them, African American women in the 20th century had easier access to proper beauty products, as well as opportunities to get proper education and future in the beauty industry. This was followed by inspiring women around the U.S., proving that even though she was from a lower class, Walker is able to work herself up the ladder and become a self-made millionaire. In the 19th to the early 20th century, it was a challenge for people of color to obtain fair-paying jobs, then let alone women of color. But Madam C.J. Walker and other philanthropists like Annie Malone created new job openings for these women.